Thomas Eames was an illiterate labourer living in Plymouth. At the outbreak of the war, he joined the army. His first wife left him, which was not an uncommon occurrence, but they never divorced. It should be borne in mind that divorce was very difficult in those days and was the preserve of the rich, raffish class rather than those lower down the social scale. The country would have to wait for the reforms of Roy Jenkins and Harold Wilson's cabinet for sanity to prevail. Thomas met a girl called Muriel Elsie Bent, and they had a child. In effect, this was a bigamous marriage, and Thomas served 2 days' imprisonment for this offence. They moved in with his parents until they found their new home at number 3 Northumberland Terrace, Westward Ho, Plymouth. Over to you, James.
Muriel had tired of Thomas and found a new boyfriend and moved out of the house. Thomas kept seeing the star-struck lovers in the streets of Plymouth, which aroused his jealousy, and he concocted a plan. He was friendly with his brother-in-law, Ronald Greep, of Greenbank Avenue, and went to see him, announcing there was a letter in the house for Muriel. Greep noticed that Thomas was in a state of unusual nervousness. In the meantime, Thomas took a kitchen knife to work and borrowed a file and turned it into a type of dagger. When Muriel came to collect her letter, she gave her ex-lover a kiss. At that moment, Thomas plunged the dagger into the back of the victim. Death was instantaneous, though he repeated the attack. Thomas did not run away or try to cover up the crime, but went to Ronald Greep, and both went to a local police station to report the crime. As Thomas could only write his name, his confession was dictated to the police. He was obviously charged with murder. This is where the notion of capital punishment becomes a type of lottery. In France, this would be classified as a crime of passion, but in the UK, he had planned the murder, and insanity was ruled out. One of the curious aspects of the British approach to murder is the role of the Home Secretary. In former times, this was the preserve of the king, who was advised by his Privy Council, who could and did pardon genuine murderers. This role eventually became the preserve of the Home Secretary as part of his genuine duties, which could be summarised as follows: law enforcement in England and Wales, national security, immigration, and oversight of the security services. Obviously a full-time job, and described rightly as one of the great offices of state, the others being the Prime Minister, Chancellor of the Exchequer, and Foreign Secretary. But who became a Home Secretary? Basically, anyone the Prime Minister felt like appointing. Did they have to be qualified? Not really. Some were legally trained, like Herbert Asquith, while others, such as Jim Callaghan, were party hacks. From the point of view of the condemned man, it was a rather macabre version of Lucky Dip. Was it a full-time role, supposedly protecting the public? Home Secretaries seemed to have ideas of their own. At the time of the murder in Plymouth, the Home Secretary was David Maxwell Fyfe, who was a serious barrister and was at the Nuremberg trials. Later, part of his brief was Welsh affairs, and he acquired the wonderful political nickname of Die Bananas. Instead of concentrating his efforts against thugs, gangs, bank robbers and the like, Fyfe had a fixation about homosexuals, and one of his self-appointed aims was to rid England of this male vice, this plague as he put it. The numbers of homosexuals in prison rose from 1,276 in 1939 to 5,443 during his tenure, from October 1951 to October 1954. Fyfe sanctioned the famous Wolfenden Report. The committee contained the good and the great, including the 12th Marquess of Lothian, a Foreign Office Minister, Lady Stopford, and a magistrate. In order to spare the blushes of the female committee members, it was decided that the well-known biscuit maker Huntley and Palmer should be used. A Huntley was a homosexual, and a Palmer was a prostitute. The committee had difficulty finding homosexuals, and they recommended the decriminalisation of gay behaviour. Needless to say, Thomas Eames, aged 31, was hanged at Horfield Prison in Bristol, on the 15th of July 1952. He is reported to have put up a fight to the end. Fife went on to be Lord Chancellor and was sacked in Harold Macmillan's Night of the Long Knives. He remarked to Macmillan that he was given less notice than a cook. The reply came back that it was easier to find a new Lord Chancellor than a good cook. So, back to you, John, for your thoughts.
Crimes of passion are the staple of the film industry, of which the most famous example is The Postman Always Rings Twice. Quite often it involves a scheming woman enticing a poor character to undertake a dastardly act. This rather shows an attitude towards the problem, as it is quite often seen as a woman's fault. In the UK, there is no such thing as a crime of passion, and the only real defence is temporary insanity. This was impossible as Eames was seen sharpening up the knife prior to stabbing his ex-partner in the back. We normally associate this with the French legal system, where it is classified as a crime passionnel. But it has been used in many legal systems from the USA, Brazil, and the Philippines, and many men have walked from the court citing this defense. It is quite often mixed up with the notion of honor killing. Needless to say that it has been attacked by feminist groups as really an assault on the female sex. If you would like to know more about this episode and the other West Country murders in this series, you can visit our website vintagemurders.uk or on our YouTube channel.